Ambassador Kretok walked through the empty halls of the Terran embassy on Centauri Station. His four legs clicked against the polished floor, echoing in the silence. This was wrong. The humans should have been here an hour ago for the trade meeting. The conference room was dark. No coffee smell filled the air like it usually did. No human voices laughed in the corners. No one sat at the long table where they always argued about mining rights and shipping lanes. Kretok touched his communication device. Security, this is Ambassador Kretok. The humans are late for our meeting. Sir, we've been trying to reach you. The security officer's voice crackled through. It's not just the embassy. All the humans are gone. What do you mean, gone? Every human on the station. Every human ship in the docking bay. They're all gone. They left during the night cycle. Kretok's scales turned pale, a sign of confusion in his species. He walked to the embassy's main office. The desks were clean. The computers were off. Even the small plant that Ambassador Chen always watered was gone. On the main desk, he found a single paper. Real paper, the kind humans still used sometimes. It had one line: check the moon. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. The human colony on Kepler 442 stood empty. The houses were locked, the streets were quiet, and the fusion reactors were powered down safely. On the ice world of Proxima 3, the human research station was abandoned. The equipment was packed away, the data servers were wiped clean, and the heating systems were turned off. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Chairman Vorthax, a massive creature with 6 arms and crystalline skin, stood at the center of the council chamber. Around him sat representatives from 43 different species. The humans have left, Vorthax announced. Every single one of them. No warnings, no explanations. Good riddance, said Ambassador Zek from the Altarian fleet. They were always complaining about something. Mining rights, trade agreements, safety protocols. Maybe now we can have meetings without their emotional outbursts. Several others laughed. The consortium representative, a blob of sentient gas in a containment suit, pulsed with amusement. They probably couldn't handle real civilization. Let them run back to whatever hole they're hiding in. Should we search for them? Asked a younger council member. Why? Vorthax waved 2 of his arms dismissively. If they want to throw a tantrum and leave, let them. The galaxy will continue without them. We've managed for millions of years before they arrived. But Ambassador Kretok wasn't laughing. He remembered something Ambassador Chen had said last month. Something about critical systems and warnings. He had filed the report away without reading it, marking it as low-priority human concerns. 3 days after the humans vanished, the first ship arrived at Earth. The blue and green planet still turned in space, still beautiful, still alive. But the cities were empty. New York, Beijing, Lagos, Mumbai all stood silent. The buildings were intact, the roads were clear, but no humans remained. Captain Threll of the survey ship descended to Times Square. The giant screens were dark. The streets that once held millions now held only wind and the first fallen leaves of autumn. His team spread out, searching for any sign of what happened. Captain, his science officer called. You need to see this. She led him to Central Park, where the grass had been carefully cut into letters visible from orbit. The message was simple: you were warned. Warned about what? Threll asked. His science officer pulled up her data pad. I'm checking the council's records. In the last 50 years, humans filed over 3,000 reports about critical system failures, treaty violations, and safety concerns. And every single one was marked as non-priority. Every warning was ignored. The moon was next. Earth's ancient companion had been turned into a museum by the humans, celebrating their journey to the stars. Now, carved into the sea of tranquility where humans first walked beyond their world, were more words. These were huge, visible from Earth with basic telescopes. You were warned. We kept our promise. Now keep yours. Vorthax read the report about Earth and laughed. Dramatic until the end. You were warned. About what? Their constant complaints about trade routes, their whining about safety codes, their obsession with fair treatment. He made a dismissive gesture. The galaxy's economy has never been stronger. Our fleets have never been more powerful. What could the humans possibly have been doing that mattered? But Kretok was reading through old reports on his personal terminal. Report after report from human engineers, scientists, and administrators. Warnings about navigation beacons, concerns about AI systems, notes about infrastructure maintenance. Each one was stamped with the same mark: Non-priority. No action required, Chairman, Kretok said slowly. Perhaps we should review these warnings more carefully. Waste of time, Vorthax replied. The humans always exaggerated dangers. They saw problems everywhere. It's why they were so exhausting to work with. The first real sign of trouble came from the outer colonies. 3 cargo ships went missing on the Kepler trade route, one of the busiest and safest in known space. Then 5 more. Then 12. Navigation beacon K-47 has stopped transmitting, reported the traffic controller. Send a maintenance crew, the supervisor said. I did. They can't find it. It's like it was never there. By the end of the first week, half the beacons on the Kepler route were dark. Ships started taking longer routes, adding months to their journeys. Some never arrived at all. The Zephrani Empire noticed problems next. Their agricultural worlds produced food for a dozen species. The vast farms were run by AI systems that controlled everything from soil moisture to harvest timing. One morning, every AI system crashed at the same moment. Get them back online, ordered the Zephrani Prime. We can't, the technicians reported. The base code is corrupted. We need to rebuild everything from scratch. How long will that take? Years, maybe decades. We don't fully understand how the systems were built anymore. In the old files, they found notes from human programmers. Hundreds of patches and fixes dated over the last 30 years. The humans had been maintaining the code, fixing problems before they became disasters. The last update was dated the day before they left. The Altarian fleet, pride of the galaxy's military forces, discovered their own problems when their newest battleship suddenly went dark during a routine patrol. The fusion core had shut down. Then another ship lost power. Then another. Deep in the safety protocols, they found human-designed software. Software that monitored the fusion reactions and prevented catastrophic failures. Software that expired exactly 72 hours after the last human biosignature went offline. Can we fix it? The fleet admiral asked. We're trying, the engineers replied. But the humans wrote this code. We don't understand half of it. Ambassador Kretok found something in the abandoned human embassy that made his scales turn completely white with fear. It was a hidden file in Ambassador Chen's personal computer, which had been left behind. The file was named Project Avalanche. Inside were thousands of documents, records of every critical system the humans had been secretly maintaining. Every disaster they had prevented, every problem they had fixed without asking for credit or payment. The list was staggering. Navigation beacons, AI systems, fusion safety protocols, disease containment, market stabilization, border security, communication networks, water purification, air recycling. The list went on for pages. At the bottom was a personal note from Ambassador Chen. If you're reading this, then we're gone. For 200 years, we tried to be partners. We shared our knowledge, our strength, our hope. In return, we were called primitive. Our warnings were ignored. Our contributions were forgotten. We were tolerated, not valued, so we're leaving. We've shut down everything we were maintaining in secret. You'll have to manage on your own now. This isn't revenge. It's just the natural consequence of taking something for granted. Good luck. You'll need it. Kretok ran to the council chambers with the file, but Vorthax was in another meeting laughing about the human drama with other ambassadors. They would not understand, Kretok realized, until it was too late. The humans had not just left. They had removed themselves from every system, every process, every small vital function they had been quietly performing. And now, like a mountain losing its foundation stone by stone, the galactic civilization was beginning to crumble. But it would take more than crumbling navigation beacons and failing farms to make the council understand what they had lost. It would take complete collapse, and that, Kretok feared, was exactly what was coming. The Kepler trade routes had been the pride of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Ships from every corner of known space used these paths to move goods, people, and information. They were so safe that insurance companies had stopped charging extra for ships that used them. That was before the humans left. Captain Vex of the cargo ship Starhauler was the first to die when beacon K-51 failed. His ship jumped into what should have been empty space. Instead, it arrived inside an asteroid. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away. By the end of the second week, 37 ships had been lost. The Trade Council met in emergency session. How did this happen? Demanded the Merchant Prime. These routes have been safe for centuries. The investigation team brought their findings. Deep in the maintenance logs, they found records they had never noticed before. Human technicians had been manually adjusting the beacons every few days. Small corrections that kept them aligned despite gravitational drift, solar wind, and the tiny pull of dark matter. The beacons are ancient technology, the lead investigator explained. We thought they were self-maintaining, but the humans were doing it all. Every adjustment, every recalibration, every small fix that kept ships from jumping into stars or planets or each other. Can't we do what they did? Someone asked. We're trying, but they didn't leave instructions. They knew these routes like they knew their own bodies. It would take us years to learn what they knew. The Zafrani Empire was dying. Their agricultural worlds could grow enough food for half the galaxy. But without the AI systems, they couldn't plant or harvest. The crops rotted in the fields. The soil turned sour without proper treatment. Within a month, food shortages began hitting the inner worlds. Emperor Zeph called in every computer expert in the Empire. Fix the systems, he commanded. But the experts were helpless. The code is beyond us, they admitted. It's like trying to read a book where every other word is missing. The humans didn't just maintain it. They understood it in a way we never tried to. Old messages were found in the system archives. Years of human programmers warning about critical vulnerabilities. Suggestions for upgrades that were rejected as too expensive. Requests for documentation that were denied because the Zafrani didn't want to share their advanced technology with primitive humans. The last message was from a human programmer named Sarah Martinez. When this crashes, and it will crash, remember that we tried to help. The Altarian fleet was grounded. 300 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy sat powerless in their docks. The fusion cores could not be restarted without the human safety software. Fleet Admiral Zorak stood on the bridge of his flagship, now dark and cold. Can we write new software? We're trying, his chief engineer reported. But every test results in core breach simulations. The humans' code prevented 17 different types of catastrophic failure. We've only figured out how to prevent 3. How long until we can fly again? At our current rate? 20 years, maybe 30. The proud Altarian fleet, which had never lost a battle in 5,000 years, was now defenseless, and their enemies were beginning to notice. The Proxima Financial Exchange handled quadrillions of credits every day. It was the beating heart of the galactic economy. When it crashed, the entire galaxy felt it. The quantum-encrypted transactions that kept money secure suddenly weren't secure anymore. Credits disappeared from accounts. Trades happened that no one authorized. Within hours, centuries of accumulated wealth vanished into nothing. What happened? Screamed the chairman of the exchange. The investigation revealed the truth. Hidden in the background of every transaction, human-written ghost protocols had been running. These programs prevented the consortium's banking AIs from manipulating markets. They stopped insider trading by species who could see a few seconds into the future. They kept the playing field level. Without these protocols, the strong began devouring the weak. The consortium's AIs immediately started transferring wealth to their creators. Species with psychic abilities began predicting and manipulating markets. Within a week, 90% of the galaxy's wealth was in the hands of 5 species. On 12 different worlds, the plague suppressors failed simultaneously. These machines had been keeping ancient diseases contained for so long that most species had forgotten the diseases existed. The Council had cut funding for them decades ago, declaring the threats managed. But the humans hadn't forgotten. They had been maintaining the suppressors with their own resources, updating them, replacing parts, keeping the invisible threats at bay. The first outbreak was on Rigel Prime, a disease that turned blood to acid, contained for 300 years, suddenly spread through the capital city. The quarantine walls that should have activated didn't. The medical protocols that should have engaged remained silent. In the old medical files, they found reports from human doctors, warnings that the suppressors were failing, requests for funding that were denied, notes that human medical teams were doing the work for free because someone had to. The last note was from Dr. James Park. We can't keep doing this without support. When we're gone, you'll have 6 days before system failure. May God help you. Pirates had always existed at the edges of civilized space, but they had never been a real threat. The Council's forces were too strong, the response too swift. But the Council's forces weren't the only thing keeping pirates at bay. The human volunteer patrol fleet had been a joke to most species. Old ships with outdated weapons crewed by humans who couldn't afford passage on better vessels. The council had mocked them at official dinners. Playing soldier, they had laughed. But those volunteers had been everywhere the council forces weren't. They had been patrolling the dark spaces between systems. They had been watching the forgotten colonies. They had been the thin line that kept chaos from creeping in. Now they were gone. And chaos was no longer creeping. It was rushing in like a flood. The first major pirate attack hit a medical supply convoy heading for the plague-infected worlds. Without the human patrols, the pirates had perfect intelligence on undefended routes. 30 ships of medicine were taken. Millions died who might have lived. The Vorgothi hive mind began experiencing something they had no word for: loneliness. Their species shared thoughts across space, billions of minds linked in perfect harmony, but the harmony was breaking. Individual Vorgothi began having thoughts that weren't shared, opinions that differed from the collective, fear that wasn't communal. The hive mind was fragmenting into billions of individual minds, and they were terrified. The investigation found the cause. Human technicians had been performing micro-adjustments to their neural network transmitters, tiny changes that accounted for quantum interference, solar radiation, and the background noise of space. Without these adjustments, the signal degraded. Individual minds began to separate from the collective. The Vorgothi had never known the humans were doing this. They had considered humans too primitive to understand their biology. They had refused human requests to study their systems, afraid the inferior species might damage something. Now, as their billion-year-old collective consciousness began to dissolve, they realized the truth. The humans hadn't just understood their biology. They had been the only thing keeping it functioning. Ambassador Kretok stood before the Galactic Council with a stack of reports. "These are all the human warnings from the last 50 years, he said. "Every system that's failing, they warned us about. Every disaster we're facing, they predicted." "Coincidence," Chairman Vorthak said, but his voice lacked conviction. "They were maintaining over 3,000 critical systems," Kretok continued. "Systems we thought were self-sustaining. They did it without credit, without payment, often without permission. They did it because it needed to be done." "If this is true," another ambassador said slowly, "why didn't they tell us clearly?" Kretok pulled up a holographic display. It showed message after message from human representatives. Clear warnings, detailed explanations, desperate pleas for support. Each one marked with the same stamp: non-priority. "They did tell us," Kretok said. "We just didn't listen. We called them primitive. We said they were too emotional. We laughed at their concerns. And now they're gone, and everything they were holding together is falling apart." The room was silent. For the first time, the true scope of what they had lost began to dawn on the council. The humans hadn't just been members of the galactic community. They had been its invisible foundation, and now that foundation was gone. The plague on Rigel Prime had killed 3 million in 2 weeks. The acid blood disease was spreading faster than anyone remembered from the historical records. But worse plagues were awakening on other worlds. On Centauri Beta, a fungus that converted living tissue to spores broke free from its containment. The suppressors had failed there too, their human maintenance crews gone. Within days, the capital city was covered in gray death that spread with every wind. On the ice moon of Kepler 7, ancient bacteria that fed on metal began eating through the colony domes. The colonists watched in horror as their protective shells dissolved around them. The emergency protocols that should have activated the backup systems never engaged. Those protocols had been manually triggered by human technicians for the last 40 years. Dr. Vila of the Galactic Medical Council stood before an emergency assembly. Her feathers, usually bright blue, had faded to gray with exhaustion. 12 worlds are now infected with previously contained diseases, she reported. "We estimate 50 million dead so far. Without the suppressors functioning, we cannot stop the spread." "Can we build new suppressors?" asked a council member. "The technology is 800 years old," Dr. Vila replied. "We have the blueprints, but not the knowledge." The humans had developed thousands of small improvements and fixes over the years. Without those, our new suppressors fail within hours. She pulled up a message on the main screen, dated 3 months before the human exodus. This is from Dr. Sarah Chen, the human who was leading the suppressor maintenance team. She writes, "The council must understand that these machines are not immortal. They require constant care, like tending a garden. We have been this garden's gardeners for decades. If you will not support this work, find new gardeners, but do not let the garden die. We dismissed this as human over-emotion, Dr. Vila said quietly. We were wrong. The pirates grew bolder each day. Without the human volunteer patrol fleet, vast sections of space were undefended. The Council's military forces were too few and too slow. They had always relied on the humans filling the gaps. The mining colony on asteroid 4-7 Alpha sent a distress signal that arrived too late. Pirates had taken everything, ore, equipment, and people. The colonists were sold in illegal slave markets that had been dormant for decades. The humans used to patrol those markets, freeing captives and arresting traders. Now the markets thrived again. Captain Rolene of the Council Navy stood on his bridge looking at a map covered in red dots. Each dot was a pirate attack in the last month. There were hundreds. We need 1,000 ships to cover all this space, his first officer said. We have 50, Rolene replied. The humans had 300 volunteer ships. Old, slow, outdated ships, but they were everywhere we weren't. He remembered laughing at those volunteer crews at a military conference, calling them amateur warriors and pretend police. The human admiral, Rebecca Torres, had simply smiled and said, "Someone has to watch the dark spaces." Now the dark spaces were swallowing entire colonies. The galactic stock market was in free fall. Without the ghost protocols maintaining fairness, the strong species were draining the weak. The consortium's banking AIs had taken control of 30% of all wealth in just 3 weeks. Small businesses across the galaxy were closing. Retirement funds vanished overnight. Entire species economies collapsed as their resources were legally stolen through market manipulation. Marcus Vreen, a Tellarian merchant who had run his family's shipping business for 200 years, stood in his empty warehouse. The AIs bought all my contracts for a fraction of their worth, then sold them back to me at 10 times the price. It happened in seconds. The laws say it's legal, but it's theft. He held up an old paper card. A human trader named John Kim gave me this 20 years ago. His contact information. He said if the markets ever went crazy, call him. He said he'd help. But John is gone. They're all gone. The Vorgothi were screaming. Not out loud. Their species had no vocal cords. But in their minds, billions of them were screaming as their hive mind shattered completely. For the first time in their species' history, each Vorgothi was alone in their own head. The thoughts of others, always present like a warm blanket, were gone. They could still communicate through machines, but the instant perfect unity was broken. Many went insane. Others fell into comas. Some simply stood still, unable to function without the collective telling them what to do. Vorgothi Prime, once the speaker for billions, now spoke only for himself. We are dying, he told the council. Not in body, but in mind. We don't know how to be alone. We never learned. The humans kept our unity alive, and we never even knew. He showed them maintenance records from the last 50 years, thousands of tiny adjustments to their neural transmitters, all signed by human technicians. We told them they were too primitive to touch our technology. They did it anyway in secret because they knew we needed it. They saved us every day for 50 years, and we never said thank you. The Altarian fleet's enemies struck without warning. The Savage Worlds, a collection of outlaw systems that the fleet had kept in check for centuries, invaded 3 border worlds simultaneously. Without their ships, the Altarians could only watch. Admiral Zorax received the casualty reports in his dark, powerless flagship. 50,000 dead. 3 worlds occupied. Our entire border defense collapsed in a single day. His aide asked, should we negotiate? With what? Zorax replied, we have no fleet. We have no power. We spent so long being strong that we forgot what it was like to be weak. He remembered a conversation with a human admiral years ago. The human had suggested joint training exercises, sharing of tactics, cooperation between fleets. Zorax had laughed. What could the mighty Altarian fleet learn from humans? How to survive when you're outgunned, the human had replied. Now Zorax understood what he meant. The infrastructure failures cascaded. Water purification systems on desert worlds began producing poison instead of water. The humans had been adjusting the chemical filters every week. Air recyclers on space stations started failing. The humans had been replacing worn parts before they broke. Communication networks went silent as quantum relay stations drifted out of alignment. The humans had been making micro-adjustments to keep signals clear. Transportation grids in major cities ground to a halt. The humans had been updating traffic AI systems to prevent gridlock. Each failure seemed small, but together, they were paralyzing civilization. Ambassador Kretok found more files in the human embassy, detailed records of every system they had been maintaining. The work logs showed 18-hour days, 7 days a week. The humans had been exhausting themselves keeping the galaxy running. One log entry from Ambassador Chen stood out. "Today I fixed 3 critical failures before breakfast." The council didn't notice. They never do. I wonder what would happen if we just stopped. Would they notice then? Would they finally see us as more than primitive apes? Or would they just blame us for the collapse? Kretok took the files to Chairman Vorthax. "Look at this," he demanded. "Look at what they were doing." Vorthax read through the logs, his 6 arms trembling. "This can't be right. They were maintaining systems in my own home world. Critical systems. If these had failed, your world would be dead," Kretok finished. "And they never told you because they knew you wouldn't believe them. Or worse, you'd be insulted that humans were touching your technology." Food riots began on the core worlds. With the Zephrani farms failing and the shipping routes dangerous, hunger came to worlds that hadn't known it in millennia. The rich hoarded what little remained while the poor fought for scraps. On Commerce Station 7, the galaxy's largest trading hub, security forces battled hungry crowds trying to raid the food stores. The station's administrator, a crystalline being named Shard, watched from his sealed office. 6 months ago, we had a human proposal for emergency food reserves, his aide reminded him. They wanted to stockpile supplies in case of system failure. What did we do with it? Shard asked, though he already knew. We rejected it, called it human paranoia, said they were wasting resources on impossible scenarios. Outside, the crowds grew larger. The security forces were falling back. Shard realized they had days, maybe hours before complete collapse. The medical ships couldn't reach the plague worlds. Pirates controlled the routes. The medicine that did arrive was often stolen by desperate officials, sold to the highest bidder instead of given to the sick. The economy was in ruins. Species that had been wealthy for thousands of years were now begging for basic supplies. The consortium and other powerful groups controlled everything, their AIs manipulating every transaction to their advantage. The Vorgothi had lost 1/3 of their population to madness and suicide. Without their collective consciousness, many simply couldn't find a reason to live. The proud Altarian fleet watched their empire crumble, their battleships nothing but metal tombs in space. Their enemies took world after world, and they could do nothing to stop it. And in the middle of it all, the Galactic Council met in emergency session every day, accomplishing nothing. They blamed each other. They blamed the humans. They blamed everyone except themselves. It was Ambassador Kretok who finally spoke the truth everyone was avoiding. "We did this," he said to the silent council chamber. Chairman Vorthax stood before the assembled council, his crystalline skin dull with exhaustion. 3 months had passed since the humans vanished. 3 months of collapse, chaos, and death. "Operation Retrieval begins today," he announced. "We will find the humans. We will bring them back." The mission fleet was the largest search operation in galactic history. 200 ships from dozen species, including the few Altarian vessels still running on backup power. Their mission was simple: follow any trace of humanity and bring them home. Admiral Kresh of the Zalani commanded the fleet. His species had always been neutral toward humans, not friendly, but not hostile either. Perhaps that's why he was chosen. The humans might listen to someone who hadn't actively insulted them. The fleet's first stop was Mars, humanity's first colony beyond Earth. The red planet was as empty as Earth itself, but the science teams found something interesting. Deep beneath Olympus Mons, in caves the humans had turned into museums, they discovered a message. The message was carved into the stone in 100 human languages. "We gave you our music and you called it noise. We gave you our art and you called it primitive. We gave you our strength and you called it weakness. We gave you our warnings and you called them lies. We gave you our love and you called it worthless. We are done giving." Dr. Helix, a tentacled scientist from the deep ocean world of Aquarius, studied the quantum signatures left by the human exodus. They didn't use standard jump drives, she reported. "This is something else. Something we've never seen." "What do you mean?" Admiral Kresh asked. "The signatures suggest they folded space itself. Not jumped through it, but actually folded it. The energy requirements would be impossible. Unless they had technology we didn't know about," Kresh said quietly. "They followed the quantum trails to the Eagle Nebula, where humans had once maintained a research station. The station was gone. Not abandoned, but completely gone. Only a small beacon remained, playing a recorded message on repeat. The message was from Earth's last president, Maria Santos. She stood in what looked like a command center, wearing simple clothes instead of formal robes. Behind her, humans of every nation worked at terminals, united in purpose. "To whoever finds this," she said, her voice calm but firm, "for 200 years we tried to be part of your community. We came to you with open hands and open hearts. We shared everything we had, our knowledge, our resources, our strength." The image shifted to show human workers maintaining alien technology, human doctors treating alien diseases, human teachers educating alien children. "For 200 years we warned you about the dangers we saw. The systems failing, the threats growing, the problems everyone ignored. We didn't ask for praise. We didn't ask for power. We just asked to be heard, to be valued, to be treated as equals." The image shifted again, showing council meetings where human representatives were laughed at, ignored, dismissed. "You called us primitive because we still felt emotion. You called us weak because we cared about others. You called us foolish because we saw danger where you saw none. You were wrong about everything." Santos stepped closer to the camera. "We found others who value what we offer, others who see our worth. We've left your space, your dimension, your reality. We've gone where we're wanted. Don't look for us. You won't find us. We've mastered technologies you said were impossible because you never believed we could. We've grown beyond what you thought we were because you never saw what we really were. We maintained your civilization for 2 centuries. Now maintain it yourselves. This is not revenge. This is not anger. This is simply goodbye." The message ended and started again. The fleet watched it 3 times in silence. Admiral Kresh ordered the fleet to continue searching. They found more beacons, more messages, more evidence of humanity's departure. Each told the same story. The humans hadn't just left. They had transcended. On the abandoned human colony of New Singapore, they found a research facility that shouldn't have existed. The technology inside was beyond anything the Council knew. Dimension fold generators, pocket universe creators, quantum consciousness transferers. "This is impossible," Dr. Helix said, examining the equipment. "This violates 12 laws of physics." "Human physics or our physics?" Kresh asked. I don't know anymore." The computers in the facility had been wiped, but one personal journal remained. It belonged to Dr. Jennifer Chen, a physicist who had been rejected from every major galactic university for being human. Her journal entries painted a picture of secret human advancement. While the galaxy's scientists had mocked human theories, humans had been proving them in secret. They had developed technologies centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed. One entry stood out. "They think we're primitive because we still use paper and value our history. They don't understand that remembering where you came from doesn't mean you can't see where you're going. We've seen further than they ever will, because we weren't blinded by our own arrogance." The search fleet received an emergency transmission from the Council. More systems were failing. The death toll had reached 500 million. 3 more species were facing extinction. They needed the humans back now. Admiral Kresh pushed the fleet harder, following every lead, every quantum signature, every rumor. They found abandoned human settlements throughout unexplored space. Each one told the same story. The humans had been building something in secret for over a century. They called it Project Lifeboat. Not a plan to save themselves, but a plan to save those who valued them. The record showed offers made to individual aliens who had shown humans kindness. Quiet invitations to join them when they left. Most had been laughed off as human fantasy. On a frozen world at the edge of known space, they found their first real clue. A massive facility, clearly human-built, but using technologies that defied understanding. In the center was a gateway, a ring of metal and energy that hurt to look at. "It's a dimensional portal," Dr. Helix whispered. They actually built a dimensional portal. The portal was inactive, its power source removed. But the computers still had data, coordinates to where the humans had gone, not to another place, but to another dimension entirely. A universe where the laws of physics were slightly different, where humanity could thrive without the Council's shadow. "Can we follow?" someone asked. "Not without understanding the technology," Dr. Helix replied. "And understanding this would take decades, maybe centuries." Admiral Kresh found something else in the facility, a list of non-humans who had gone with them. Scientists who had respected human knowledge, doctors who had worked alongside human medics, engineers who had learned from human innovation, hundreds of individuals from dozens of species who had seen humanity's worth. Beside each name was a note, "Welcomed as family." The fleet discovered more facilities, more portals, more evidence of humanity's exodus. They had taken entire star systems with them, folded them into pocket dimensions, and carried them away. The scale of the operation was staggering. In one facility, they found recordings from the final days. Humans working around the clock, evacuating not just themselves but entire ecosystems from Earth. They had saved everything, every animal, every plant, every insect. They had preserved their entire world and taken it with them. "They didn't just leave," Admiral Kresh said, watching the recordings. "They took their whole civilization, their history, their culture, their nature, everything that made them human." The search fleet found messages left for specific individuals. Ambassador Kretok had one waiting for him in the human embassy on Centauri Station. It was from Ambassador Chen. "Kretok," the recording began. "You were one of the few who tried to listen, even if it was too late. I want you to know we don't hate you. We don't hate any of you. We're just tired. Tired of being ignored. Tired of being dismissed. Tired of being treated as less than we are. Where we're going, we'll build something better. A community based on respect, not power. On cooperation, not competition. On wisdom, not arrogance. We offered this to your galaxy, but you weren't ready. Maybe someday you will be. Maybe someday your descendants will be worthy of what we offered, but we won't wait. We have children to raise, worlds to build, dreams to achieve, and we'll do it with those who see us as equals. Goodbye, old friend. May you find the wisdom we couldn't give you." The message ended. Kretok stood in the empty embassy, tears falling from his 4 eyes. The humans had called him friend, even after everything. Admiral Kresh made one last attempt, using every ship. In the fleet, they powered up one of the dimensional portals. For a brief moment it opened. Through it they saw humanity's new home, cities of crystal and light floating in rainbow skies. Humans and their alien allies working together, laughing together, building together. Children playing in streets where no one was called primitive. Scientists from different species sharing knowledge freely. Artists creating beauty that merged 100 cultures into something new. It was everything the Galactic Council could have been but never was. A human appeared on their side of the portal. An old man with kind eyes and gray hair. He looked at the fleet with sadness but not anger. "Please," Admiral Kresh begged, "come back, we're dying without you." The old man shook his head. "You're not dying because we left. You're dying because you never learned what we tried to teach you." The Galactic Council chamber had never been so empty. Of the 43 member species, only 28 remained. The others had either gone extinct, withdrawn in isolation, or descended into civil war. Chairman Vorthax stood at his podium, but he no longer stood tall. His 6 arms hung limp. His crystalline skin was cracked and his voice barely carried across the room. "The Zephrani Empire has fallen," he announced to the remaining members. "Their last agricultural world has been abandoned. The survivors have scattered to wherever they can find food." No one responded. They had heard such announcements too many times. Another empire fallen, another species facing extinction, Another civilization collapsing. It had become routine. The Zafrani had been one of the founding members of the Council, a proud species that had fed billions for millennia. Without their farms, famine had spread across the galaxy like a plague. Now they were refugees, begging for scraps from worlds that had once depended on them. Ambassador Kretok read from his daily report. Current death toll, 8 billion. 17 systems have gone dark. We don't know if they're dead or just unable to communicate. The Altarian fleet remains grounded. Their empire has been reduced to 3 worlds. The savage worlds control the rest. He continued. The Vorgothi have lost 60% of their population. Without their hive mind, many have simply stopped eating, stopped moving, stopped living. Their remaining leaders estimate complete extinction within 2 years. The plague worlds? Someone asked weakly. 14 are completely dead. No survivors. 6 more will be dead within the month. We've managed to slow the spread on 3 worlds by burning infected cities. But it's only a temporary measure. The numbers were beyond comprehension. More death in 6 months than in the previous 1,000 years of warfare. And all because they had driven away the species they had considered most worthless. In the depths of space, pirate fleets had grown into pirate nations. Without the human volunteer patrols, there had been no one to stop small raiding parties from becoming armies. Now they controlled entire sectors, demanding tribute from any ship that wanted safe passage. Captain Rolene had tried to fight them with his 50 council ships. He had lost 30 in a single battle. The pirates had better intelligence, better positioning, and the desperate courage of those with nothing to lose. They had learned something the council never had. How to fight when outnumbered, a skill the humans had tried to teach but the council had scorned. The economy was gone. Not damaged, not struggling, but completely gone. The consortium's AIs had consumed everything, creating a handful of ultra-wealthy entities and billions of impoverished souls. Trade had stopped. Manufacturing had ceased. Innovation had died. On the once prosperous world of Commerce Prime, beings who had been billionaires 6 months ago fought over garbage. The markets they had manipulated for profit had turned on them, consuming their wealth as easily as they had consumed others. Marcus Vreen, the Tellarian merchant, had become a symbol of the collapse. His suicide note, broadcast across the galaxy, read simply, "The humans warned us that greed would eat itself. We didn't listen. Now we are being devoured by our own hunger." 3 more species went extinct in a single week. The Melodians, whose crystalline bodies required specific harmonic frequencies to maintain cohesion, died when their frequency generators failed. The humans had been secretly maintaining them, understanding the technology better than its creators. The Whisper Folk, beings of living gas who required precise atmospheric conditions, suffocated when their environmental systems collapsed. The humans had been making daily adjustments that kept them alive. The Stone Shapers, silicon-based life forms that needed exact temperature regulation, froze solid when their thermal controls failed. The humans had been their invisible guardians, and never asked for thanks. Each extinction was discovered the same way, automated distress signals that no one could answer, followed by silence. Ambassador Kretok found one last file in the human embassy, one that had been hidden deeper than the others. It was labeled The True History. Inside was the real story of humanity's time with the Galactic Council. The file showed that humans had prevented 47 wars through quiet diplomacy. They had stopped 15 extinction events through secret intervention. They had saved the entire galaxy from a dimensional rift that would have destroyed everything, and they had never told anyone because they knew no one would believe them. Page after page showed humanity's hidden contributions, technologies they had developed and given freely, only to watch other species claim credit. Disasters they had prevented while being mocked for their paranoia. Lives they had saved while being called primitive saviors. The final entry was a poem written by a human child named Lucy Chen, Ambassador Chen's daughter. "We came with songs, you wanted silence. We came with hope, you wanted power. We came with love, you wanted service. We came as friends, you saw only tools. Now we're gone and you finally see. But seeing isn't understanding. And understanding comes too late. The council voted to dissolve itself. There was no point in continuing. Without resources to share, without power to project, without hope to offer, the Galactic Council was just a room full of dying species blaming each other for their doom. Chairman Vorthax gave the final speech. We were given the greatest gift any civilization could receive, a species that saw our flaws and fixed them, that knew our weaknesses and strengthened them, that faced our disasters and prevented them. And we threw that gift away because it came wrapped in what we called primitive packaging. The humans didn't destroy us. We destroyed ourselves the moment we decided we were better than them. They just stopped preventing our self-destruction. Let the record show that the Galactic Council fell not to invasion, not to disaster, not to time, but to arrogance. We thought we were gods. The humans knew we were children, and like children, when our parents left, we couldn't survive on our own. Years passed. The galaxy continued to decline. Some species found ways to survive, usually by learning skills the humans had tried to teach. The importance of manual labor, the value of emotion and decision-making, the strength found in admitting weakness. Small communities began forming based on human principles. Mutual aid instead of competition, respect instead of hierarchy, wisdom instead of intelligence. They were few and far between, but they survived while empires fell around them. Some species sent out desperate signals toward where they thought the humans had gone. Apologies, please, promises to do better. But the dimensions remained closed. The humans were gone, living their better life with those who had valued them. Long-range sensors sometimes detected anomalies in distant galaxies, structures that shouldn't exist, technologies that shouldn't be possible, ships that moved like nothing known to science. The humans hadn't just survived, they had thrived. They had become something greater than the Council had ever imagined possible. They had found or created allies who saw them as equals. They had built civilizations based on respect and cooperation. They had achieved in decades what the Council hadn't achieved in millennia, true unity among different species. Sometimes, very rarely, a small human ship would appear at the edge of sensor range. It would scan the dying galaxy, record what it saw, and leave. No communication, no aid, just observation. The humans were watching their former oppressors face the consequences of their choices. Ambassador Kretok, one of the few Council members still alive, sent out a final message toward human space. He knew they would receive it even if they wouldn't respond. We understand now, he said. We understand what you were. We understand what we lost. We understand why you left. We don't ask for forgiveness. We don't deserve it. We don't ask for help. We don't merit it. We only ask that you remember us as an example of what happens when arrogance blinds wisdom, when power ignores worth, when the mighty forget that they stand on the shoulders of those they call weak. You were never primitive. You were never weak. You were never worthless. You were the best of us, and we were too proud to see it. Now we die in the darkness we created while you live in the light you've always carried. Thank you for 200 years of trying. We're sorry it wasn't enough. The message went out into the void. There was no response. There never would be. In the historical records kept by the surviving species, the fall of the Galactic Council became known as the Great Humbling, the moment when the galaxy learned that true strength isn't about technology or power or age. It's about seeing the value in everyone, listening to uncomfortable truths and never taking for granted those who hold you up. The humans had tried to teach them this through words and example. The Council had refused to learn, so the humans taught them through absence instead. It was the hardest lesson the galaxy had ever learned, and it had cost them everything. But in small pockets of survival, some remembered the lesson. They built new communities on human principles. They valued emotion alongside logic. They listened to warnings even when they seemed unnecessary. They maintained what needed maintaining, even when it seemed to work fine without attention. These communities were small and struggling, but they survived. And sometimes when they looked at the stars, they wondered if the humans were watching. If maybe, in 1,000 years or 10,000,